Welcome into the Empty Bottle Sports Podcast. Happy to be back this week to discuss college football, NFL, and we're going to talk a little baseball tonight as well. First off, let's go around the room and show everybody our drinks. I'll start off. I got some 1% milk, Prairie Farms, always good. Real good. Wipe it off the chin there. Best. All right, Corey, what do you got in front of you today?
Going with some bourbon. There's not enough left to dirty a glass, so we're drinking her straight out of the bottle, boys.
Love that. Love that. Zane, what do you got in front of you today?
Hey everybody, yes, I've got some Meyer brand apple juice. It's a Granny Smith Gala and Red Delicious pressed juice.
All right, we got quite the variety today. I like the diversity here. Let's jump right into it. We'll start with college football before we kind of dive into the other sports here. But college football, we're more than halfway through the season. College football playoff rankings are going to be starting to come out in the next couple of weeks. But that doesn't mean we can't start now and talk about our college football playoff hopefuls. So obviously we know the top four. Those are pretty cut and dry because they're teams with no losses. But let's talk about the teams with one loss and who still have a chance that we believe of making the college football playoff. Zane, I'll start with you. Which one-loss college football team has the best shot in your eyes to make the college football playoff?
Yeah, this one is tough for me because you do have Michigan and Ohio State sitting there at 2 and 3 who have to play each other. So I feel like there's really only one spot up for grabs because if you lose to a top 4 team, I don't foresee them dropping too far. So currently with one loss, I think I like Texas. And I know we're so high and low and there's so much going on with Texas, but I do like Texas as a one-loss team. I think they played Oklahoma really well. Oklahoma, did prove they could win clutch games, but they also haven't looked, they've been up and down as well, so they may drop a game that they're not supposed to as well. So I see Oklahoma at risk of dropping out and Texas sneaking in if all goes right.
I agree with you, Zane. I feel like they still have their own destiny. And they're not going to play Oklahoma again until the Big 12 championship. So they need to win out, obviously. But if they can beat Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship, I think they're into the college football playoff. Corey, you threw the horns down, which is disgraceful, 15-yard penalty. So
keep the laundry off the field, Danny.
Yeah, what do you disagree about that Texas pick, man? I thought Texas was back.
It's not even that I disagree with the Texas pick. I think I just can't go with everyone else. I think I just have to be different. It's ingrained into me. I'm going to roll with USC. I know that was an atrocious game and an atrocious half for Caleb Williams, but I still think he's a top 3 guy for a Heisman. I know I think Penix really might have had his Heisman moment there, but I think Caleb Williams can still carry that team to go. I think they could run the table for the rest of the year, if he plays up to his abilities. And I'm going to go with USC, but Zane made a great point. You still got Michigan and Ohio State that have to play each other. And I think either one of those teams gets in ahead of USC or Texas with one loss, to be totally honest with you, if they meet up and outside of that game go undefeated. To be totally honest, I think they play harder schedules, better defenses, and I think that Texas could lose another game this year, maybe more than one. I think USC potentially could too. Oregon, could be in that talk as well, but I still, I think all of us agree that Bo Nix just doesn't have a clutch bone in his body. And when it comes down to it, he's going to fumble the bag, man. He's got nothing when it comes to it. So yeah, I would say right now out of one loss teams, I'm going to run with USC, but I think there's going to be other teams with one loss that are going to be, later on in the year that are going to be better teams anyway.
Man, I agree before I watched that Notre Dame game. Maybe it was just because they just got down and dirty with Notre Dame. And Caleb Williams is a different player when he doesn't have 30 seconds to pass the ball in the pocket. My thing is, I don't want to hear anything about Caleb Williams choosing what team he wants to get drafted by after watching that performance, because that was you just take whoever you get drafted by kind of performance. Obviously, it was just one game, and he's had a great career overall at USC. But if he has another clunker like that, especially if it's in the college football playoff, I don't want to hear anything about him choosing which team to get drafted by. But that's a good pick because the Pac-12, man, that Pac-12 is a gauntlet though. I could see them losing another game, if not in the Pac-12 championship.
I wouldn't be surprised to see no undefeated teams come out of the Pac-12. The crazy thing is, there's just not a defense to be found in the entire conference, not one.
No, I agree. I agree. There's probably going to be a couple two-loss teams that should be in the college football playoff, but just aren't because of it's only four teams until next year. So it sucks for the Pac-12 because that's a really good conference, and it sucks that they're going to be the Pac-2 next year. But that's their problem. That's their fault. They did that to themselves. All right, let's flip the page here and go to the NFL. And we'll kind of flip the script here instead of talking about hopefuls. Let's talk about the disappointing teams in the NFL. A lot of disappointing teams. I know it's kind of early and you can never rule a team out this early. But you kind of can with some teams, and at least some teams might not be living up to expectations, even if they do turn around eventually. Zane, who you got as your first team being in the NFL that's most disappointing to you?
Oh, most disappointing, guys. We already know it's Who Day. I mean, you know, I it we know they're slow starters. It happens every year. But Joe Burrow gets his big contract. They've got all the hype moving forward into the season, and they're 3-3. They're at the bottom of the division, and I've been unimpressed. They haven't really had the offense hasn't been explosive. Every time the Bengals got the ball the past couple of years, honestly, I thought they had a chance to score. Now, that's unrealistic, but I
Yeah.
honestly felt, oh, they could score on this possession easy. This year, I'm like, please score, just please. I'm begging them. I have no confidence in the team. Unfortunately,
You and
I
my
mean,
fantasy team.
you got him, you got Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert, both got monster contracts, and you know, silent applause or mini applause for those guys. I'm glad they got paid. Uh, but when you show up and go 3-3 in your first six, you start to wonder if it's worth all that, if it's worth that big percentage of the salary cap. So I'm pretty disappointed in both those teams. Mostly our Who Dey Cincinnati Bengals.
Like, doesn't it feel like every year they start off like 2-3, 3-3? Like it feels like
Uh,
they don't ever get traction until like November.
yeah, but I think we would have anticipated a step in the right direction now. Joe Burrow and I know he didn't play in the preseason due to the injury, but you, these are the important games, right? Down the stretch, you're going to be wishing you had one or two games in your pocket, right, for home field advantage or even the bye. So uh,
Yeah.
just disappointing from the standpoint that this was a title contender. We should have been 4-2, 5-1 at this point.
That's
Yeah,
a
and
good
you don't
point about the
expect them
home
to
field
struggle
advantage.
offensively, really, the way that they had. You might drop some games, but you made a good point. It seems like in the past when Joe Burrow has the ball in his hands and Jamar Chase and Boyd and all of these guys are on the field, it feels like they could score at will. They might get outscored, but it feels like they're gonna put up a fight, and they're not. They seem flat, and that's worrisome for, I imagine, Cincinnati fans.
Yeah, yeah, they're struggling to be I don't know, a really effective team on offense. So that's supposed to be their bread and butter because they're built for shootouts. And it's a really good point about home field advantage, Zane, because it's kind of lost in the early. I mean, you can still make the playoffs and make a run, but it's so much more difficult if you're fighting uphill at like from the wild card all the way to the through the championship game, three away games in a row. That's tough to do year in and year out if you're trying to compete for Super Bowl. So I agree with that. I'm gonna go with the Los Angeles Chargers. I think that man, they had that huge clunker last year against Jacksonville in the playoffs, just blew that huge lead. That was almost a fireable offense, but now, I mean, I seriously think the head coach is on a hot seat. He's a huge candidate to get fired before the season even ends, especially if they get eliminated from the playoffs a few weeks before the season ends. Also, Justin Herbert, we know he's talented. But man, I just don't know if it's just like in-game decision making by the coaches, or if it's just a lot of little things adding up for them not making deep runs in the playoffs, or just not separating themselves in that division. We thought by now that the Chargers would be just a force to be reckoned with in the AFC with how Justin Herbert, how good he was in his first couple years. But really, they've just kind of stayed in neutral, and they haven't really progressed forward or backward. Corey, what do you think about the Chargers?
Yeah, I think it's coaching. I mean, that coach has, he's had a solid roster. I mean, the wide receiver room is nothing to sneeze at. The running back is more than solid. You got a legitimate, bona fide franchise quarterback in Justin Herbert, and to be completely unable to put it together. I mean, the buck stops with the coach. It has to. At that point, there is too much talent to blame anyone else. And to be totally honest, I think the same can be said for Cincinnati. I think it's coaching, and that is the problem. Now I understand Burrow's hurt, but I think it's the same thing in both situations. There's a coaching problem there, and my money would be on Cincinnati to figure it out before the Chargers. But
Yeah,
I
we've seen
kind
them
of
figure it out mid-season before.
exactly. He's had it sorted before. The Chargers, I mean, their head coach is not really. They've had some good games, don't get me wrong, last season, but yeah, I think he's the problem, and I think the solution I'm starting to err towards maybe get him out and get somebody else in.
I agree. They might have held on to him 1 year too long, but time will tell. He still has plenty of season left to turn that team around. Corey, who do you have for the most disappointing team in the NFL this year?
Yeah, I don't know. I personally am not surprised. Disappointed, yeah, but not surprised. But I'm gonna go with the New York Giants. Sitting at 1-5, I know they're in the NFC least, but that they've kind of turned that around in the NFC. There's some bona fide, some legitimate teams there, and the Giants just haven't kept up. They paid Danny Dimes like he was the future. They paid him like he's an elite top 10 quarterback. They paid him like he might be a top 5 or 6 quarterback, and he's not delivered. Saquon's been hurt. I understand that. That's a problem. Let's be real. He's the best player on that entire roster.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it's not close. And that's a problem, by the way, when your running back is the best player on your entire roster and your quarterback's not close. You can have your running back be your best player, but your quarterback had better be close second, and he's not at all. That's my most disappointing team, man. I wouldn't be surprised to see them win less than 5 games this year.
I think it's a great pick. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just because they made the playoffs last year. Like everyone in New York was considering that a playoff team. I don't think that anyone thought Super Bowl, but they at least thought competing
maybe
for a playoff spot. Yeah.
Yeah. And the crazy thing is, I don't think it's the coach in this one. This is the one where I don't think the coach is the problem. I think it is more front office where Danny Dimes, listen, I like the guy. He seems great, but he's not elite.
Terrible contract. It's just not a good contract.
This reminds me of a lesser Kirk Cousins.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's actually just like the generic brand Kirk Cousins. And I feel like Kirk Cousins wasn't anything to write home about to begin with.
He should be sponsored by Kmart. It's rough.
I think we've seen
Kmart Danny Dimes.
I think we've seen a trend this year, right? Most of the quarterbacks that got signed have been underperforming, right? Look at Jimmy Garoppolo in Las Vegas, underperforming. Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert. Lamar Jackson's had a good season, but not a great season so far.
I don't think you can pin them on. Yeah.
You look at, Derek Carr's not really having a great season.
Mm-mm. Aaron Rodgers went down in the first series, so that can't really count that one. But technically underwhelming.
You kind of do see that it's a general trend when quarterbacks get paid, the rest of the team kind of drops off because you gotta get rid of spending somewhere. And we saw it with the Seahawks, like how they started to drop off after Russell Wilson got paid, and he that salary takes up a lot of the cap space there. And obviously, he was worth it at the time to sign him. He was one of the big, the quarterback position is so difficult to find, but man, it kind of hamstrings you and it's really difficult to sustain winning when you have a quarterback taking up a huge percentage of your salary cap.
You're talking to a
Um,
Browns fan, Danny. I am so very well aware. My quarterback has got a little boo boo on his shoulder and he can't play no football.
yeah.
But we're still going to drop the 49ers. Let's go.
Yeah, that was a huge upset. Huge upset. I'm happy for the Browns. I'm glad that Watson wasn't under center when you guys won that game.
Me too. Can't
Yeah,
notice
I
me.
think a lot of people were. All right, let's switch over, get a little comical today. Let's talk about our meatball plays from this weekend. Again, meatball plays, just goofy ball plays that happen, boneheaded plays, coaching, can happen outside of the lines, can happen during the game. Does not matter. Mascots, even too, are included. Corey, who you got for your meatball play of the week?
Yeah, so, and I'm going to do this because I actually like the kid, but I've got two and it's the same kid. Shadur throwing a pick, I believe in overtime, correct? To seal the loss, right? That comeback win for Stanford. That I actually like Shadur. I know I've talked a lot about his daddy and how much he annoys me, but I actually starting to like him a little bit too. He still annoys me, don't get me wrong. But he threw the pick, and then the real meatball play of the game was his social media. Like his pages were posting at halftime. Like, I'm
Yeah,
sure he's not the one controlling that. I understand that, but what a stupid oversight in the NIL era where you're making all this money. People are already kind of so people are questioning that and whether or not that's good for the sport. And this is going on at halftime. Wow, what a just stupid. That is the meatball play, man. That is just silly. And they're getting all of this flack for all the clickbaity, like clout chasing stuff, and they're doing that at the half. Like, you gotta have it set up better, my guy. And you know what? I'm sure he will. I still think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. I still think he's got a bright future, but wow, did he have a rough day.
yeah. That was a tough loss. I went to bed, they're up 29-0. I'm like, oh, yeah, my plus 10.5 spread is going to be perfectly fine. I woke up and they were just getting blasted. I'm like, oh my God.
Oh, you know what? Now that you mentioned gambling, another meatball play of the day was me having a 7 leg parlay where I hit every leg, including Michigan at like minus 33, Ohio State at minus 17, a bunch of other ones. And the one that I lose because I am stupid and I bet on Rutgers and Michigan State, and I bet on Rutgers at minus 3.5, and they won by 3.
Oh, that
That is
is
And we're running
terrible.
tragic.
around in the backfield to kill time to kneel it out. They could
What
have
were
just
the
kicked the
odds on
field
that?
goal. I don't even know, man, but it was enough. It was stupid. You know what? With good weather, I think that they blow Michigan State out. The weather wasn't that great, and I paid for it. It was like a
Oh,
$5
that
bet that would have
hurts.
paid like
That
400 and
hurts.
something.
Speaking of parlays, did you guys see that guy in jail who made that crazy like parlay and ended up able to pay his bail and actually had some cash on the side too? There was like a
Side hustle.
video of him calling from jail with his parlay that he locked in. He had like a WNBA game in there, um, and like a few college football, NFL, and then it hit for like 13 grand or something. It was nuts.
They're
So
awesome.
that's pretty funny. All right, Zane, who you got for your meatball play of the week?
Yeah, meatball play is more of a sad story. Just gonna go with Chicago. Tyson Bajan. First series. Game's not over. Game's not over. You can't turn the ball over. Comes in, like a what? A fumble scoop and score. And it was
The
so
strip sack.
deflating. It was so deflating. You had Fields go out, and you're like, okay, maybe the game's still on. Then he fumbles, scoop and score, and I'm like, oh, this is over. They did fight back at the end,
Well, then,
but
yeah, they
just
fought
the
back, and then he was driving down the field for them to take the lead too, and then he throws a back-breaking interception.
yeah, just I can't fault the guy for being thrown into action, but I mean, just throw it into the third row if you're not if nobody's open. Like, just can't turn the
Just
ball
sail it.
over.
Yeah.
That's the same philosophy from high school, college, and the pros. Just can't turn it over. Just broke the backs
Mm-mm.
of Chicago, man. Just did it to us dirty. So unfortunately, he receives Meatball Play of the Week.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he's wearing the blue and orange for us.
It's a
All
sad
right.
day when we're waiting for Nathan Peterman to come in, man. I'm just begging him, please
Oh my God.
put in Peterman. It's a sad day.
That's our boy.
Where where we trade 2 6-round picks for Tyler Brady, come back to our team.
Oh my gosh.
All right, I'm gonna go back to college football. There's some kicking woes with the Purdue Boilermakers. For some sponsorship thing, a student during halftime or during a timeout, a student hit a 39-yard field goal for some prize or whatever. That Purdue field goal kicker went 0 for 3 that day, including missing a 40-yard field goal. So that is my meatball play of the week at home, and one of the students just out of the stands, some kid who's studying engineering just comes out and just shows you up like that. I know it's like different when you're in a game and not, but it's just a bad look. It's just a bad look.
It's
And
bad luck.
I
Yeah.
just think that's pretty funny.
Do I hear an open tryouts in the near future?
Yeah,
Hey,
game day.
maybe
Game day.
he's
We
got
got
a
to show up at
chance.
game day and pretend like we're diehard fans, man. Got to somehow weasel our
Oh
way
my
into the
gosh.
game
Do we have
day,
any eligibility?
kicking challenge. Yeah.
I'm gonna
How's that
blow a
gonna
hammy out
work
on
when
national
like
television.
yeah, how's with all the new television networks? Do you guys think like game day, college game day is still gonna go to the schools that like don't won't stream games on ESPN? Like the Big Ten is just going to be a Fox and NBC and CBS. They're not going to do anything with ESPN except for non-conference games when they play away games and stuff or bowl games. But that'll be interesting. Same with Big Noon Kickoff. Are we going to see Big Noon Kickoff at any of the SEC schools? I don't know.
Be interesting to
Um,
see.
yeah, I hope they still travel around and stuff. I still think that that's just good for ratings and everything, but I hope they don't create that, I don't know,
Monopoly.
separation. Yeah,
They'll probably work something out, right?
I hope so. I hope so. All right, let's switch gears a little bit here and talk about some playoff baseball. Right now, the American League Championship Series is going on between the Houston Astros and Texas Rangers. And we have the National League Championship Series on the other side with the Arizona Diamondbacks and the Philadelphia Phillies. So, outside of analytics, outside of guesses and who's going to win, I just want to talk about who we want to win and just be fans here for a moment. I know we are fans for the most part. We're not great analytics or analysts, but let's just talk about who we want to win. All of our teams are out of it. Cubs didn't make the playoffs. Guardians didn't make the playoffs. So let's just talk about who we want to win moving forward. I think we'll start with ALCS, and I'm pretty sure we're. Can it be unanimous that nobody wants the Houston Astros to win?
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Can't have it. Can't have it.
Yeah, I'm still salty about 2017. I know they maybe won it, fair and square last year, but I'm still
Nope.
I'm still
Cheaters.
salty.
Once a
Yeah,
cheater, always a cheater.
yeah, and they really didn't receive any punishment. So
Slaps
I
on the wrist.
yeah, barely yeah, and they still have their rings and they still call themselves champions, which is stupid because they're not. They don't deserve it. So, but hopefully the Rangers are up 2-0 on them. Hopefully the Rangers can finish it off. That is a cool like in-state series though. That's pretty sweet. Hopefully that develops into a postseason rivalry that we see for next few years, and the Rangers just beat them every year.
Yeah, or we
Uh,
could just not see the Astros in the postseason.
I would be fine with that too. I would be fine if they just become a
Yeah.
garbage franchise again. That's probably where they
Back where
should
they
go
came
back
from.
to. Yeah, pretty much. All right, let's talk about the NLCS, Diamondbacks, Phillies. Who you got, Zane?
Yeah, that one is tough for me. I do actually think that Bryce Harper is good for baseball. I do want to see him in another World Series. But at the same time, the Diamondbacks have been a great story for baseball, and Corbin Carroll. Uh, I'll go with Phillies. Like I said, I just remember Bryce Harper being in the Sports Illustrated magazines and so much hype around him. So I'd love to see him get a World Series. So I will go. I'm rooting for the Phillies.
That's a great reason. Yeah, he's been hunting for that World Series ring. The year after he left the Nationals is when they won their World Series, which is kind of funny. And there's another one of those things where big contract players soaks up a lot of the cap space. I know salary cap's a little bit different in baseball, but the Phillies have been able to, show that doesn't really matter as much so far, at least. I I'm gonna go with the Diamondbacks just because of the small. I really like seeing the smaller market teams beat out the bigger market teams. I know Phoenix is getting pretty big, but it's not Philadelphia yet. So I'm gonna go with the Diamondbacks. I'm rooting for them, even though I do like Kyle. I love Kyle Schwarber, obviously former Cub, and it would be cool to see him win another ring. But I'm gonna go with the Diamondbacks. Corey, who you got?
Yeah, I agree that it's cool to see the Diamondbacks be competitive and be like very competitive. They're right up there. It's pretty neat to see, but I am with you, Zane. I think Bryce Harper is great for baseball. I have been on that bandwagon since he touched the league. I mean, for the last 10 years, what are the most exciting players in MLB? It's him and Mike Trout, and then I guess now Ohtani, of course, he's quite electric and a different kind of special, really. But um, I've just been on that bandwagon, and he really seems to fit the vibe of Philly really well. And I
Yeah.
am no Philly fan. I don't like any Philly sports teams. I think all these Philly people out here, you got this dirty little city. I love you little weirdos. But but Bryce Harper fits you guys, and it is kind of exciting to see things. And I just want to see dingers, man. Come on, let him rip.
I would say the Phillies are the least annoying Philly team out there,
It
probably
is, yeah.
of the four major sports out there. I would Phillies. I least hate. I hate them the least, probably.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it would really be cool to see another World Series matchup with the Astros and Phillies again. And if that was the case, I would obviously root for the Phillies, and I think America would be too.
Dingers, baby.
All right. Good stuff about baseball. Let's go into our final thoughts. Just one final thought for us, and Corey, I'll let you lead off since you're kind of impartial on it. Is it time to move on from Justin Fields for the Bears
All
quarterback?
right. Yeah, let's get into it. So, first and foremost, I don't think that Justin Fields is somebody that can't be an elite quarterback. I think he can be an elite quarterback in the NFL. I think he's got a lot of the intangibles. I think he's got a lot of potential. And I think he's got a good head on his shoulders. And I'm a Michigan fan, so I'm not his biggest fan. But I do think for the Bears, it is the right decision to move on from him. Right now, you could get something for him if you trade him, if you send him to an Atlanta, if you send him to maybe a Tennessee even. I know they just drafted Will Levis, but if maybe not this year, but in a year, if they've still held on to Fields, they're I'm thinking they're going to want a different quarterback. There's some teams out there that you could maybe send him to get some draft capital or some players back or both potentially. And I do think that they need to get. I think they need to get a little younger at quarterback again, and I think they need to do a little more rebuilding. I think there's some front office work that needs to be done, and maybe some head coaching changes. But right now, you could still. I know he's not your favorite right now, Danny. You could still tank for Caleb Williams. You could still get the top 2 draft picks if you got him and Marvin Harrison. Whoa, just whoa.
With
Or,
DJ Moore on the team, also.
Yes, exactly. I mean, you could pick your quarterback too. It's not like there's a shortage of good quarterbacks that are going to be in this draft. I mean, you've got quite a few potential great options. I just think that right now, Caleb Williams has solidified himself as the number 1 option if you're looking at injury concerns, age, and overall ceiling. But there's still plenty of great options. I think you move on. I think it's better for Justin Fields too, actually. But that's just me.
Yeah, a change of scenery might be best for Justin after this year. Zane, do you think you could stomach a midseason trade for Justin Fields?
Yeah, I don't think it's a horrible idea, but I think they need to make a decision, right? I'll read some of the names, and I think the decision should be to redraft somebody. I mean, I'll read you the names for 2024 free agency. You have Kirk Cousins. Are we inspired by Kirk Cousins? Nope. We just talked about him
Never,
being
ever.
Mr. Generic. Ryan Tannehill, Jacoby Brissett, Tyrod Taylor, Marcus Mariota, Sam Darnold,
Oh,
famous Jameis.
All great backups.
All
great
Baker Mayfield, Drew Lock, Gardner
Oh.
Minshew. All uninspiring names.
I don't know. I
Baker?
heard Marcus Mariota and Baker Mayfield in there. I'm kind of.
No, what you heard was Jesus Girls and Marcus Mariota. But no, he's no, I don't trust any of those quarterbacks to lead us into the future. So I know we've been stockpiling draft capital. We have to translate that into either very, very good draft picks or solid players, Pro Bowlers like DJ Moore. But I wouldn't be surprised, and if we moved off of Justin Fields as well as probably both Luke Getsy. We talked about this on our episode, right? It's a three-headed monster. Luke Getsy, Eberflus, and Fields, in my opinion, have all proved not to be the right fit for Chicago.
Wild thought here, because there's no universe I can imagine this happening. But what if you guys were to pull a New York Jets? What if the Jets found something with Zach Wilson or whoever and they figure something out? What if you could trade for Aaron Rodgers and you could get Papa home and you could let him have his second home and then run your franchise, somewhere north
no.
at least.
Not for no.
He's
not
good
for
at winning in Soldier Field.
No. He just shows
I'm
violence.
so sorry.
He just woke up and chose violence.
And the recording had to go.
Every quarterback plays well at Soldier Field as long as they're not wearing a Bears uniform.
I'm gonna bow out. I'm sorry.
Yeah, let's cut it. We'll cut the episode there. I'm gonna get upset. I was having a good night. I'm gonna get upset when we talking about this. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening. We'll talk about this weekend's preview tomorrow night. We appreciate you all listening. We'll talk to y'all soon.